College football news, bell notification, like the channel, subscribe, and share to get all your latest breaking college football news. College football news is going to explain why, where, when, and how the stumbling and bumbling and backing their way into the playoffs, Ryan Days and the Fighting the Ohio State University brother could actually take out and knock down. After 3 weeks to prepare in a devastating loss to Michigan, they could actually go into the Peach Bowl behind an explosive offense and take down the defending national champions. Going into the Peach Bowl, you can see Ryan Days in his 5th season as Ohio State's head coach, and has had a great 5 seasons, going 13-1, 9-0, 7-1, 11-2, 11-1, finishing 3rd, 2nd, and 5th in the national polls at the end of the season, while also going 1-2 in the college football playoff, playing for national championship in the COVID 2020 season. Just look at the Fighting Ryan Days Big Ten record, 31-2 as Ohio State's head coach, and he's on the hot seat going into this national college football Final Four in the playoffs this season in 2022 down there in the Peach Bowl against the defending champions, because those 2 losses are to Michigan, and Ohio State feels that you could throw any Ohio State head coach in there and he can go 10-1, 11-0 until it comes down to the Michigan game and then the college football playoff. We all know Georgia's good. We all know Georgia's great. We all know Georgia's the defending national champion. So why do we think Ohio State can take down and knock out the defending champs and Kirby Smart, Stetson Bennett, and the rest of the Bulldogs from Georgia? What separates Ohio State from the rest of the nation is this group of dynamic, most talented core wide receivers in the country, and there's no arguing that, behind a sophomore Marvin Harrison Jr., the ability to be the best football player on the field with junior first-round NFL prospect C.J. Stroud, and that cannon of an arm, throwing it to him all over the football field, when you can just throw the ball up in single or double coverage, like right here behind C.J. Stroud. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player on the field and can go up and get the football. It changes the game. It changes the way you can play when you are more talented than the other team's defensive cornerbacks and safeties, and you can essentially take and pick and get whatever you want on the football field. There is a caveat, though, that Ohio State has had a problem with when they come up against big physical football teams, as Georgia is maybe the most big and most physical football team on both sides of the lines, offensive and defensive lines, maybe to Michigan. You tend to become a little bit soft when you're pass-oriented and not a powerful physical football team and running football team like you used to be at Ohio State. And that's going to be interesting to see how they can handle that pressure from Georgia and the Bulldogs. Looking at Ohio State's schedule, you can see they dominated pretty much everybody on the schedule except Michigan in the final game in the shoe for the Big Ten championship game. They took out Notre Dame, at Michigan State, Iowa, Penn State, Northwestern, Indiana, and Maryland, along with Arkansas State and Toledo handily. Taking a look at their potent and dynamic offense that they have at Ohio State, points per game, 44.5, points off turnovers, 59, comparison to only 19.3 and 31 for the opponents, rushing yards, 108, passing on first downs, 154, penalties, 24, in comparison to 66 and 87, respectively, on defense, yards gained rushing, 2,538 yards lost rushing, 156 on sacks and negative plays. Average per rush, 5.5, decent average per game, 198, TDs rushing, 29. But when you look at that dynamic passing game behind Marvin Harrison Jr., average pass per play, 9.4, average per catch, 14.1, average per game, just shy of 300 at 294.2, and 38 passing touchdowns in comparison to only 16 on defense and 184 yards per game defensively. Let's not kid ourselves, though. This game in the Peach Bowl against Georgia is going to come down to how C.J. Stroud and that offensive line can hold up against a physical, big, athletic, and speedy Georgia Bulldog defensive line. And can they give C.J. Stroud and the Heisman runner-up enough time to pick apart the Georgia secondary that is not, and I repeat, not as good as it was last year, contrary to what I've been hearing from my Bulldogs of the Fighting Kirby Smarts down there in the comment section, which I love so much. Keep commenting down there, all my college football fans. But that up front, the front 5 on that offensive line and C.J. Stroud is going to be what determines the game, and on the defensive line, and what Jim Knowles can do to try to slow down one of the most physical, big offensive lines in college football, and the way they like to run their game is similar to Michigan, with power running, throwing to their athletic. 2 NFL tight ends they got going down there at Georgia. This man right here, Jim Knowles, he's fighting for his job going into this football game against Georgia. If his defense looks like it did against Michigan and gets shredded, he's going to be on the hot seat, and they'll throw him right out of town and right out of Columbus as quick as he got there, less than 12 months. Jim Knowles, the former Oklahoma State defensive coordinator in the Big 12, is already on a short leash there in Columbus. And to me, and the way I'm hearing these Columbus fans talk in media, he is the reincarnation, as I believe, of this man, Don Brown, that used to fumble and stumble and trip all over a football field. And Jim Knowles right here has the same sort of defensive philosophy as this man right here that impersonated a defensive coordinator for 5 seasons in Ann Arbor and essentially had coachings for idiots on defensive strategy. What Jim Knowles and Ohio State needs out of the chute is a defensive line that's able to push and move the defensive line like they did right here against Notre Dame, against Georgia. Need to push that defensive line backwards, get into the backfield, and like 51 right here, wraps up and makes a good physical tackle and brings the running back, or in this case, down on 2nd and 7 in the red zone on a big stop, bringing up a key 3rd down. Something they're going to see a lot too, and Jim Knowles and Ohio State need to be ready for, is a mobile quarterback, Stetson Bennett from Georgia, deceptively mobile, but very mobile, moving around the pocket and even taking a play 25, 30 yards down the field with his legs. When that happens, they need to be ready and prepared to stay in their gaps, stay in their assignments, and contain. They had a nice stun up the middle there in 44, pressured up the middle, and then the quarterback from Notre Dame rolled out to the wide side of the short side of the field. But Ohio State safeties moved up, and linebackers with their speed were able to contain him, and that's going to be critical against Georgia, as Stetson Bennett's going to be moving all over the pocket. Those are a lot of questions for Jim Knowles, Ryan Day, and the Ohio State University brother to try to knock out and take out the defending national champions, the Bulldogs, and the Fighting Kirby Smarts, and Stetson Bennett's right there hoisting that coveted trophy that Ohio State's trying to get. But I think it's going to be a great football game. I think it's going to be a good football game. And I think it's going to be a football game where people get shocked. People are surprised, and people are stunned by the outcome as the Ohio State University puts on the game of their life to get a rematch with Michigan in the national championship.